Here was a time when the streets of America thundered with horsepower. Chrome sparkled under the sun, and every kid on the block dreamed of getting behind the wheel of a car that roared louder than their favorite rock and roll record. But for every legend that survived, there were just as many dream machines that burned too hot too fast. Some of them even pulled their makers down with them. Today we're looking at 10 muscle cars from the 60s that bankrupted their companies. These are the wild, beautiful beasts that defined an era and left nothing but tire smoke in their wake. 1. Studebaker Avanti, the last hope. In 1962, Studebaker rolled out the Avanti, a sleek fiberglass coupe meant to be their ticket back to glory. It had a supercharged V8 that could outrun Corvettes, and its space-age design looked straight out of tomorrow. For a moment, it was the pride of South Bend, Indiana. But supply problems slowed production, and only a few thousand ever made it to the road. By 1963, Studebaker shut down its U.S. operations, leaving the Avanti as a symbol of one last roll of the dice. 2. Kaiser Jeep Gladiator Thriftside, too much, too soon. Before Jeep became a household name for rugged SUVs, Kaiser tried their hand at muscle with the Gladiator pickup in the early 60s. They fitted it with big engines and stylish trims, hoping to merge muscle car flair with truck toughness. Buyers weren't sure what to make of it, and sales fell short. Kaiser never recovered from years of financial struggle and sold Jeep off to American Motors in 1970. The Gladiator lived on, but its makers did not. 3. Checker Marathon Super Sport, the taxi that couldn't be. Checker Motors was famous for building taxis that lasted forever. In the late 60s, they decided to try something wild, a high-performance version of their Marathon sedan. It was roomy, tough, and surprisingly fast, but the world wasn't ready for a muscle taxi. The experiment drained resources, and Checker retreated back to fleet sales before closing their doors entirely in the 1980s. It was a curious moment when the everyday cab almost became a dragstrip king. 4. AMC AMX, America's other pony car. American Motors wanted to prove they could hang with the big three, so in 1968 they launched the AMX. It was a short wheelbase, two-seat rocket with a big block engine, and it sold for less than a Corvette. Car magazines loved it, but AMC didn't have the money to market it the way Chevy or Ford could. By the early 70s, the AMX was gone, and AMC kept shrinking until Chrysler bought them out in the 80s. Still, those who owned one never forgot the thrill. 5. DeSoto Adventurer, A Farewell to Fins. The Adventurer was Chrysler's luxury performance car under the DeSoto brand, with gleaming fins and engines that made drag racers smile. In the late 50s and early 60s, it stood tall as a rival to Buick and Oldsmobile. But DeSoto was already struggling, and as the muscle era heated up, Chrysler decided to cut its losses. The Adventurer vanished after 1961, and with it, the entire DeSoto nameplate. It was a glittering swan song from a brand that simply ran out of road. 6. Rambler Rebel, the forgotten pioneer. Before anyone called them muscle cars, Rambler built the Rebel in 1957 with a 327 cubic inch V8. By the mid-60s, AMC tried again, but this time the Rebel had to compete with Mustangs, GTOs, and Chargers. It was quick, affordable, and ahead of its time, but AMC never had the deep pockets to keep pace with Detroit's giants. The Rebel slowly faded away, leaving behind the question, what if America had given it a fairer chance? 7. Pontiac GTO Judge, Too Much Muscle. The GTO may have started the muscle car craze, but by 1969 Pontiac went all in with the Judge. Bright colors, wild graphics, and ram air engines that pushed the limits of street power. It was the car every kid wanted, but insurance rates and fuel costs were climbing. Sales dipped, and Pontiac never recovered the magic. Though GM lasted decades longer, Pontiac itself died in 2010, leaving the Judge as a memory of when excess was everything. 8. Mercury Cougar Eliminator, the cat that lost its bite. Ford's little brother, Mercury, brought out the Cougar to sit between the Mustang and Thunderbird. In 1969, the Eliminator package turned it into a fire-breathing muscle cat with stripes, spoilers, and big V8s. It had the looks, it had the sound, but sales were modest compared to the Mustang. Mercury limped along until Ford finally ended the brand in 2011. The Eliminator remains one of those, if only, cars, close to greatness, but never quite there. 9. Plymouth GTX, Gentleman's Hot Rod. The GTX was Plymouth's answer to the growing muscle market. It was powerful, refined, and had engines like the 426 Hemi that could shake the pavement. But when the Roadrunner came along, cheaper and just as fast, the GTX lost its audience. Plymouth itself didn't survive past the early 2000s, but the GTX stands as a reminder of when a working man's car could still carry a touch of class. 10. DeLorean Prototype Muscle, a dream that never was. Before the stainless steel sports car of the 80s, John DeLorean had a vision for Pontiac and beyond. In the late 60s, he sketched prototypes for high-powered machines that pushed GM's limits. Corporate brass turned them down, and DeLorean left to form his own company. By the 1980s, his famous car and company went under. It all began in the muscle era, with ideas too bold for the balance sheet. The 1960s muscle car wars gave us some of the most thrilling machines ever built, but also some of the biggest heartbreaks. These cars remind us that chasing glory doesn't always pay the bills, but sometimes the dream itself is worth the risk. Which one of these forgotten muscle cars would you bring back if you could? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us again next time on Black and White American.